Welcome to Travel Market Life, your companion for industry insights and professional business development. Travel Market Life. Join us by webcast, video or podcast.
Welcome back to Hoteliers Voice, the second series, where we'll be looking at the power of word of mouth with Josh Henegar, the Corporate Revenue Director at 1859 Historic Hotels. With 10 hotels in 3 states, 1859 Historic Hotels is anchored in the history and traditions of its locations, celebrating and honouring the culture and community that makes each one unique. We'll be talking about how the group understands the guest experience and the way it uses guest feedback to maintain satisfaction, the importance of sentiment analysis, and the tools that allow them to do it effectively to continue delivering great guest experiences.
Travel Market Life.
Hello, welcome very much to the show, Josh. Thanks for joining us. Guest experience is a big thing. How do you get to understand what's happening with the guest experience?
Well, in addition to looking at what is going on in the industry and seeing a lot of analysis and studies about the guest experience across our entire sector, we use tools internally. In particular, things like Review Pro, which is an online reputation tool that helps us gauge our guest satisfaction by department and through specific things like some semantic analysis that allows us to break down our strengths and weaknesses by specific department and by problem areas, strength areas, and then we exemplify or address those accordingly.
And why have you realized that's so important for you to really drill down into the detail of what your guests are thinking and feeling about their experiences at each of the properties?
Well, first and foremost, because that's what we do. We're in the hospitality industry, so we need to be taking care of people. But there is a direct correlation to the revenue side of it, which is my area. And when we look at things like perceived value, it's a really important factor, and Review Pro themselves have done studies that show for every point in guest satisfaction, which they refer to as a term called GRI, the Global Review Index, every point of GRI that we can increase correlates directly to the potential to drive more ADR in particular, rate being the more profitable element of ultimately RevPAR as well. So it contributes to revenue directly. It's no doubt about that.
So you've seen it firsthand that the better the experiences, the better the ratings, the better you can get from the price of each of your rooms.
Most definitely. Absolutely. There's a direct correlation. Again, perceived value is one of those metrics that we look at within Review Pro, where the further we can, and it is strange times right now with the revenue trends that we're seeing, but the further we can drive the guest experience, the more it enabled us to drive rate and overall revenue.
I mean, you say, you're in hospitality, so of course it's all about the guest experience.
Right.
How is that sort of managed from a physical in-life, on-site, in-property experience versus sort of the digital experience there, and trying to make sure that mirrors what they're going to be experiencing when they're on and at the property?
Well, okay, so yeah, you ask a good question there, and a good point to remember is that it does come down to the operational side of things at the property levels. It is a lot easier for me to say a lot of things in the digital realm, and on paper, it's pretty clear as day that this correlates to that. But when you've got property teams working on site, on the ground, front lines, taking care of the guests, making sure that they're out there, shaking hands and kissing babies, as we say, that they are taking care of all of the basics in addition to exceeding guest expectations. And that allows us, or the tools we have allow us to bring that to those front lines. So we can talk about it all day. Here's what the data say. And this, that, and the other are your strengths and weaknesses. Well, it only goes so far until the point that you actually can apply that to the operation on site. And that starts with our general managers and their teams and department heads and all of our associates at the front lines taking care of guests.
Right. So really you are providing that feedback. You're able to get them to see what's happening with the experiences of their guests, and then they're able to address that themselves and identify how they can improve or respond to that guest's needs as and when it's happening.
That's right. That's right. And that is the power of the data that is available to us. And again, we leverage a lot of tools, Review Pro being kind of the core central system that we use to gauge what specifically are our guests saying about what they like and maybe don't like, broken down by not only department, but specific keywords, even keywords and concepts, everything from bed. Well, what about the bed? Well, it's a specific thing, or about a certain department, whether that's food and beverage or whether that's the front office team, whatever that may be. We're able to break that down pretty granularly and get a good idea of what our actual trends are, because we can make assumptions all day long. And at the property levels, it can be, and it's probably pretty easy for a lot of our managers to assume what they believe are strengths and weaknesses based on their perception of the guest experience. And a lot of times they're right, because they know their properties better than anybody, with the exception of possibly their guests. And what their guests are actually saying goes a long way in allowing us to maybe have an eye-opening experience in which we realize, these are our actual strengths and weaknesses. And that allows us to be more precise in addressing those, which, again, at the end of the day, helps drive more revenue when we have a better guest experience.
Excellent. Obviously, you're really focused on your role there of getting more revenue, which is wonderful to hear, and really how you're looking at those dynamics that are affecting that. I mean, one of the areas you talked about sort of the key words in these reviews, but it's also sentiment analysis. So how has sentiment analysis helped you and your teams really get to the bottom of how your guests are feeling and not just what they're saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. So within Review Pro, we're able to break it down by positive trends and negative trends. What's trending up, what's trending down. Sometimes they're the same, oddly enough, and we can break that down as to why and what are some of those keywords that guests are using to describe those items. And I will say that as powerful as Review Pro is, one of the things that we engage with the portal itself is by looking for that semantic analysis in which it has a positive or a negative connotation to those keywords. Sometimes, however, the language can be a little tricky. The AI is improving constantly over Review Pro. They do a great job. But every now and then we'll see a comment about, let's just say their room experience, which is a pretty vague term, right? And it may be flagged as positive. Well, when we look at the actual comment, maybe there was one positive word in there, but then there's the word "but," and it was great except for, or that kind of thing. And so we're able to actually kind of engage with the system, tell it what we know or what we've observed about that. But for the most part, it's pretty accurate in automatically identifying it as positive or negative. What that allows us to do then is by department, by keyword, by concept, break it down, and you can keep going further and further and further actually within the portal, and it's very powerful where we're able to say, okay, what about the room experiences? Oh, the bathroom. Okay, what about the bathroom? Oh, well, this part was negative, this part was positive. And then we can actually extract that data where if we want to say within the last quarter or over the course of this summer, so many people have said the pool is blank, and maybe the pool is positive or negative, or maybe we see trends that are in both categories, but it's something that that sheds some light on that specific concept and allows us to address it.
Excellent. I mean, I know that you've been using this Review Pro as a standalone, but you've also been able to integrate your reviews into your CRM. Can you tell me about that and how you've been sort of using this new connection between the two systems?
Yeah, absolutely. So we currently use the Maverick CRM from SHR, and it is a CRM is a fairly common concept now, but it's becoming more and more relevant and important. It's where our guest data live and where our profiles of our guests can be, I guess, identified and sorted and organized a little bit more than we had without this system in place. So we have a CRM where all of our guest profiles and their data live, and we are able to integrate that now with Review Pro and bring in all of that guest satisfaction data and correlate it to those guest profiles, which allows us to address and target specific types of messaging, different types of communication to those guests according to what their satisfaction experience may have been. And we can do that in a number of ways.
That's really interesting. And I guess that must also take a different way of thinking and an approach to sort of how you manage your guests, because you now have a lot more information on them digitally, either before they've arrived at the hotel or after they've left the hotel, than you've ever had before. And this requires a little bit more sensitivity in that approach.
That's exactly right. And that's the next step, is how do we leverage the tool? Because as with any new partnership, any systems that we bring on, it's only as good as our execution. And so we ask ourselves now, what are the next steps to leveraging these tools to ultimately take better care of our guests, which correlates directly to revenue, right? But again, in the spirit of hospitality, that it's giving us more information that allows us to then take steps that express either just fundamental service components of anticipating a guest's needs and then exceeding their expectations. But there's also the service recovery piece. If we're honest with ourselves, sometimes that's necessary. So we're doing a number of things right now where, using Review Pro data and specific items about, again, overall satisfaction as well as individual departments, we're able to communicate on a positive note for those that have expressed satisfaction, perhaps in their post-stay survey, which we send to all guests. We're able to then trigger response on a positive note saying, hey, we're glad you enjoyed your stay. Let's spread the word, celebrate, leave us a review, whatever that may be, or just to simply thank you and invite them back. So we're leveraging that kind of stuff now. And then the next step that we're working on is, okay, if we're able to break this down by department and by specific concerns and problem areas, we can build an endless array of communication to these guests based on what they have specifically said about their experience. And by us showing that, one, we're listening, but two, that we're maybe addressing it, doing something about it, maybe we make it up to them with whatever means that is, if it's incentives, concessions, discounts, whatever that may be. It's allowing us to make it known to those guests that we hear you and we want to make it right. That also gives us the ability to get in front of it as well before, again, if we're talking about the power of word of mouth, before they get out there and talk about us on every channel on the internet and spread the word to their friends, that gives us the ability to address it head on and do some service recovery.
I mean, I must say, it was one of the, starting points of our initial conversation before you came on, and the power still of word of mouth and how that's moved into the digital landscape, and how you really need to look after these reviews in the same old way you looked after your guests when in a pre-internet era.
Sure.
If we can ever remember that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's as important as ever, and if not more than ever. It's a pervasive channel, online reviews, and Google is kind of taking the cake as one of the primary channels, but you see it in a lot of hotel review channels, whether that's TripAdvisor, the OTAs. It's everywhere, and they solicit that feedback because they realize that it is one of the most powerful decision-making components for all travelers. If any of us do research on a place to stay, a destination, a certain type of attraction, whatever that may be, you're going to do some level of reviews to see what other people have said about this, whether that's just looking at the star rating or specifically what have people said about their experience. That is becoming more and more prevalent, in addition to simply telling your neighbor, I had a good time at XYZ restaurant or hotel. That's still a thing, of course, as well. And then, of course, the internet and all of these review channels multiply that exponentially. So getting in front of that is absolutely crucial. And soliciting guest feedback is another big thing that we're doing through our CRM as well, is welcoming them for their feedback, regardless of what we may or may not know about their stay. Because again, if we're doing all of the basics and we feel pretty confident that we're taking care of our guests, then that's going to play itself out in our favor as well. So feedback is important, word of mouth is important, and yeah, we have more and more tools to leverage that now.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously mentioned, the return post-pandemic. Have you seen that there has been a change, or what would you say are the key factors now in delivering the best guest experiences today? I.e., what are people complaining about most?
Well, okay. Yeah, there has been an absolute shift in our landscape. We've heard a lot about pent-up demand, revenge travel, whatever we're calling that this week, right? There's a lot of, I think everybody's in agreement that people were ready to get back out there. We saw that firsthand with some very interesting booking trends. It has been more difficult than ever to forecast. Guest booking windows are shorter than they've ever been, and their decision-making process has shifted greatly. For whatever reason, guests have all maybe saved up, maybe they've put off plans, and they still have maybe those plane tickets that they just pushed back a year, whatever that may be. They've been ready to get back out there, and in a lot of cases, they've been ready to spend more money. Well, when you're spending more money, you have different expectations, don't you? And that has been, I think, a pretty serious challenge for our industry as a whole. They have expectations that, one, not only would they expect it to be at pre-pandemic levels, perhaps even more so, because they have been so anxious to get back out there. They're spending more money than they ever have. Our industry has seen record-breaking ADRs and a lot of staggering revenue numbers over the course of coming out of this pandemic phase. A lot of guests are over the excuses of the pandemic also, which can present a challenge on many levels. They are more ready than ever to get back to the things that they expect, and they don't really care about the staffing shortages, the inflation rates, the shipping issues out there with supply chain and all of that. They don't care for the most part. And should they? Probably not. The least we can do is take care of them to the best of our ability. And so we've made adjustments in a number of areas to make sure that we can actually live up to those guest expectations, because one of those metrics that we do look at in Review Pro is perceived value. Did they get what they paid for, basically? And that number has fluctuated over time. And that's one that we really want to keep an eye on, because with these revenue trends, we can continue growing rate all day long, and which is very important for us, because that flows to the bottom line that much more. And as from a business perspective, profitability is inevitably very important. But it doesn't matter if we don't take care of the guests and we don't meet their expectations. And so that's been a real balancing act and a real challenge, not just for us, but I think our whole industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're not through the woods yet. That people are certainly going to be thinking and rethinking of what their expectations are going to be. And as a hoteliers ourselves, we have to keep responding and reacting as positively as we possibly can, which is certainly demonstrates the wonderful strength that hospitality people have, and in the midst of adversity, continually putting on a smile on their faces to welcome guests into the hotel and try to deliver those great guest experiences. Absolutely,
that's the spirit of hospitality, right? We don't make excuses.
Absolutely. Josh, thank you very much. That was really insightful to really learn today about how you've been managing that guest experience, and how both Review Pro and Maverick SHR has been enabling you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to progressing and getting out of this phase soon.
Wonderful. Well, that was Josh Henegar, the Corporate Revenue Director at 1859 Historic Hotels. Thanks for listening to part of Season 2 of Hoteliers Voice. Check out some of the other episodes at Travel Market Life podcast. This is Ryan Haynes, your host. Thanks for listening. Ciao for now.
For more, go to Travel Market Life. The music sensation by Zach Nelson is reproduced under license from Storyblocks. Travel Market Life is a Haynes Marcoms digital marketing agency production, serving the travel and technology industries.